Maggie Holbrook didn't get fired for being lazy. She didn't steal from the register, show up late, or slack off when no one was watching. No, Maggie lost her job because she had too much heart. It all started with a boy, a busted-up bike, and one act of kindness she couldn't talk herself out of. By the time the sun came up the next morning, Maggie's entire world had shifted. But before we get there, let's go back. Welcome to Tales Unveiled. Grab a seat, because this one's going to stay with you. Fairfield County was not exactly known for its generosity, especially when it came to single moms. Maggie had learned that lesson 3 years ago, the hard way, when her husband David passed away unexpectedly. One cold October morning, his heart just gave out while hauling timber at the mill. No warnings, no second chances, just silence. She was left with a mountain of medical bills, a 7-year-old daughter named Jessica, and a hole in her life that no amount of casseroles or sympathy cards could ever fill. The life insurance money? Barely enough to cover the funeral and hospital expenses. Everything else, mortgage, groceries, school clothes, was up to her. She and Jessica moved from their little rental house into a 2-bedroom apartment across town. It wasn't much, older building, leaky ceilings, creaky floors, but it was cheap and it was home. Now, David used to love fixing bikes. It was their weekend thing. Maggie would hand him tools, and he'd teach her how to rebuild gears or adjust a brake line. After he was gone, those skills became more than a memory. They became her lifeline. That's how she ended up at Pinewood Bicycles, working under the permanently red-faced Vernon Tucker. He'd hired her not out of kindness, but because she was the best mechanic he'd seen. Maggie could rebuild a derailleur in her sleep and tune a gear shift by ear. Tucker didn't care about her backstory. He cared that she got the job done. And he reminded her often, "This is a business, not a charity, Maggie." 5 days a week. His voice echoed through the shop louder than the word of repair stands or the clank of wrenches. Maggie kept her head down, took every shift she could get, and never complained, despite earning $2 less per hour than the guys she routinely outperformed. She made every cent stretch. Stews that lasted 3 days. Hand-hemmed jeans when Jessica outgrew hers. Weekend side gigs fixing lawnmowers or scooters. And tucked away in a dented coffee can label Jessica's college fund. Exactly $347.23. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Then came the hottest week of June. That's when Maggie met Tyler Mitchell. Tyler was 10, skinny, sunburned and red-eyed from crying, not allergies. He showed up right outside Pinewood, holding a blue Schwinn that looked like it had been in a demolition derby. Maggie was stepping outside for her lunch break when he approached. "Can you fix it?" he asked, voice shaky. She looked at the bike. A custom Schwinn Stingray, limited edition, no longer made. The kind collectors would fight over. Engraved handlebars with Tyler's name. Decals from a military unit. An Army star painted neatly on the chain guard. And a small patch from a unit, sealed under the seat in waterproof plastic. The front wheel was destroyed, the frame bent, handlebars dangling like loose teeth. "What happened?" she asked, crouching down beside him. Tyler sniffled. "I left it by the driveway, and Mr. Wilson's truck hit it. My dad gave it to me before he got deployed. Mom says we can't buy another." Maggie's stomach tightened. "He found that model just for me," Tyler went on. "Said it was like the one he had when he was a kid. He fixed it up himself, everything. I'm supposed to ride it in the 4th of July parade. He might get to watch the live stream if he's not out on patrol." Through the shop window, Maggie spotted Tucker on the phone, back turned. She knew what he'd say if she asked about the repairs. He'd laugh, grunt something about not running a soup kitchen, and slam the door behind her. The parts weren't cheap, and they weren't in stock. Maggie would have to pay out of pocket. She thought of her unpaid light bill, of Jessica's request for new sneakers, of the coffee can label for college. Then she looked at Tyler. "Bring it to the service door after we close at 6, she said. "I'll fix it." His face lit up like the sun had risen early. "Really? How much?" "Don't worry about that," she said, tousling his hair. "Just bring the bike." That night, after everyone was gone and the doors were locked, Maggie let Tyler in through the back. She laid the bike on the workbench and got a closer look under the harsh fluorescent lights. The list grew quickly. Front wheel replacement, frame realignment, handlebar swap, decal restoration. She'd need paint for the Army Star. She'd need patience. And she'd need to dip into her grocery money. I'll have to order a few things, she told him. Can you come back Friday? But the parade's Saturday. I know. I'll have it ready. Promise. After he left, she drove straight to Harlow's Hardware and dropped $83.47 on parts. She didn't flinch, not even once. For 3 nights, Maggie stayed late, long after Tucker had left. She rebuilt the Schwinn piece by piece, replaced the front wheel, used the hydraulic press to straighten the frame, found handlebars that matched the original curve. She even touched up the paint on the chain guard with a tiny brush. When Friday rolled around, the bike looked nearly brand new. Tyler showed up and stopped cold at the door. "Is that mine?" he breathed, walking up to the restored Stingray like it was a holy relic. Maggie smiled. "Looks better, huh? I can't wait to tell Dad." They were so caught up in the moment that neither of them heard the front door open. "What the hell is going on here?" Tucker's voice cracked through the quiet like a whip. Maggie turned, her heart skipping. Tucker's face was turning the color of motor oil. "Mr. Tucker, you use my shop, my tools, my time, for free labor. I pay for everything," she said quickly. "Did the work after hours." "Not all of it. I checked the cameras. Lunch breaks count. I told you we don't do charity." He turned to Tyler. "Take your bike and go, kid." Tyler looked to Maggie, confused. She gave him a gentle nod. "Thank you, Miss Holbrook," he whispered, wheeling his bike out the door. Once he was gone, Tucker's voice dropped, cold and final. "You're fired." Maggie stood frozen for a moment, the weight of his words pressing down like the summer heat outside. Fired. Just like that. 3 years of dedication, skipped lunches and underpaid shifts, gone because of one act of kindness. She didn't even notice the crowd until she turned toward the front counter. Customers. At least half a dozen of them. All standing still, watching. One of them, a tall man in his 50s wearing a faded denim shirt, looked right at her. He hadn't said a word, but Maggie could tell by his expression that he'd seen everything. With her stomach churning, Maggie walked to her workstation, hands trembling as she opened her toolbox. She couldn't even think clearly, just focus on what she needed to take, what she needed to leave behind. She didn't have time to cry. Not in front of Tucker. Not here. As she clicked the lid shut, the man in the denim shirt stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said, directing his words to Tucker. His voice was calm, smooth, the kind of voice that didn't need to raise volume to command attention. "I've been waiting on someone to take a look at my bike chain." Tucker, caught off guard, cleared his throat and straightened up. "Of course, sir. One of my guys will be right with you." The man shook his head slightly and nodded toward Maggie. "Actually, I was hoping she could take a look. I watched her just now. She's got a real touch, real talent." "I'm afraid Miss Holbrook no longer works here," Tucker said stiffly, still smarting from the scene moments before. The man didn't flinch. He simply reached into his pocket and handed Tucker a business card. "Jackson Whitfield," he said. "Whitfield Manufacturing. Cooperville." Tucker blinked. Whitfield Manufacturing wasn't just any company. It was one of the largest manufacturing firms in the state. Everyone knew the name. Suddenly, Tucker looked like he'd swallowed a bolt. "I'd reconsider that firing," Whitfield said casually. Tucker hesitated. His pride battled with his business instincts right there in front of everyone. But in the end, pride won out. "I'm afraid it's company policy," he muttered. "She broke the rules." Whitfield nodded, not pushing. "I respect that," he said. "Policies are important." Then he turned to Maggie. "Ms. Holbrook, when you're finished here, I'd like a quick word outside." Maggie didn't say anything. She just picked up her heavy toolbox, walked toward the exit, and stepped into the thick summer air. 15 minutes later, she was standing next to Whitfield in the parking lot, still clutching her toolbox like a lifeline. "That was something," he said, glancing back toward the shop. "I'm sorry you had to see that," Maggie replied. eyes downcast. Don't be, Whitfield said. I saw a skilled mechanic and a woman who's got her priorities straight. That's rare. He nodded toward her toolbox. Need a lift? Normally, Maggie would have said no. She didn't ride with strangers. But something about this man, his calm, his kindness, put her at ease. That, and the weight of the metal box digging into her side. That would be kind. Thank you. The truck was quiet, the leather seats cool against the heat of the day. As they drove the 5 blocks to her apartment, Whitfield asked questions, not nosy, just interested. How long have you been working on bikes? My husband taught me, Maggie said, watching the streets blur past the window. It was our thing. After he died, it became something more, something I could hold on to. And the boy, he asked gently. Tyler, his dad's overseas. That bike, his dad customized it himself. It's the one thing he has to feel close to him. I couldn't just let it sit in pieces. Whitfield nodded thoughtfully. When I was about Tyler's age, I had a Stingray too. Nothing fancy, just a standard model. But I used it to run papers all over my neighborhood. Made my first bucks on that bike. They pulled up in front of Maggie's building. Before she could thank him, Whitfield pulled a card from his wallet and handed it over. If you're looking for work, he said, give me a call. She looked at the card. Thick, clean cut with embossed lettering. Jackson Whitfield, CO. Thank you, but I'm not looking for charity. Maggie said honestly. Whitfield smiled. Good. Neither am I. I'm looking for people who understand that business should be about more than the bottom line. He tipped his head in farewell. Think about it. That evening, after Jessica was tucked into bed and the apartment had gone quiet, Maggie sat at the kitchen table with bills spread in front of her like a storm map. No income meant eviction in 3 weeks, maybe less. Groceries? Forget it. Utilities? Probably getting shut off before Monday. In the corner, the old television played the local news, just loud enough to fill the silence. And now a local story that's catching fire online. Maggie didn't even look up until she heard her name. A Fairfield County bicycle mechanic was fired today for repairing a soldier's son's bike free of charge. She turned her head sharply. On screen, blurry cell phone footage showed her and Tucker arguing in the shop. Some customer must have recorded the whole thing. The clip wasn't long, but it told a powerful story. Tucker yelling. Maggie calmly explaining Tyler's situation. Her voice shaking slightly as she said, his dad's deployed. This was a gift. Then the line that sealed it. Tucker sneers, he said, not my problem. The anchor came back on screen. The video has been shared over 50,000 times in the past few hours, with comments pouring in from viewers praising the mechanic's generosity and condemning the shop's response. Maggie clicked the TV off. Her face flushed, not with pride, but with dread. The last thing she needed was to be the mechanic from a video. Viral fame doesn't pay rent. She laid down, but sleep didn't come easily. Her thoughts spun with panic and exhaustion. She finally drifted off sometime after 2 a.m. The ringing phone jolted her awake. 5:47 a.m. She groaned and answered. Hello? Maggie? Came the raspy voice of her downstairs neighbor, Mrs. Fincher. I'm sorry to wake you, dear, but there are people outside, in the parking lot. Maggie rubbed her eyes. What people? Nice people, the older woman said. Nice clothes. Nice cars. One of them asked me if this is where Maggie Holbrook lives. I told him yes. Then he said something strange. What did he say? He said, there are 17 millionaires out here who want to talk to her. Maggie sat straight up. 17 what? Millionaires, dear. That's what he said. I thought you want to know before your little girl wakes up. Maggie blinked. Thanks. I'll be right down. She threw on jeans and a t-shirt, quickly braided her hair, and peeked into Jessica's room. Still asleep. Good. But what she saw when she stepped outside made her stop cold. The parking lot looked like a luxury dealership. Sleek sedans, shiny black SUVs, and a dozen or more people, men and women, dressed in sharp clothes, standing quietly in a semicircle. And right in the middle, Jackson Whitfield, He smiled when he saw her. Ms. Holbrook, I hope we didn't wake you too early. Maggie stepped out into the morning light, still barefoot, heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Mr. Whitfield, she said slowly, her voice dry. What is going on? Whitfield smiled and turned slightly to address the rest of the group behind him. These are some friends of mine, he said, waving toward the gathering. We're all part of a little something called the Pay It Forward Foundation. A foundation? Maggie repeated, eyebrows raised. He nodded. We're a network of business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives who were all, at one point or another, helped by someone who had nothing to gain. We decided years ago that if we ever got the chance, we'd return that kindness by investing in people who deserved it. And after seeing that video last night, we knew we had to meet you. A woman stepped forward next, with silver hair pulled back neatly and a warmth in her eyes that reminded Maggie of her own mother. She extended her hand. Eleanor Tmont, she said. I run Tmont Orchards, upstate. 40 years ago, a mechanic fixed my old delivery truck for free when it broke down before my first harvest. I had no money, no credit, nothing but faith, and he didn't ask for a dime. That act saved my business. So when Jackson sent me your story last night, I said, we have to go. We have to help her. One by one, the others stepped forward, each with a name, a handshake, and a story. A restaurateur who got a surprise loan when his kitchen flooded. A tech startup founder who was mentored for free. A trucking company owner who'd once been homeless, given a second chance by a stranger. Every story was different, but the message was the same. Kindness had changed their lives. And now, they were ready to do the same for Maggie. I appreciate the gesture, Maggie said carefully, her voice shaking slightly. Really, I do, but I'm not looking for a handout. A tall man with a square jaw and pressed shirt chuckled. Good, he said, because we're not offering one. Whitfield stepped beside her again, holding a white envelope. We're here to invest in you. Maggie blinked. Invest? In what? In you, he repeated. After our conversation yesterday, I did a little digging. Your repair success rate at Pinewood Bicycles? 17% higher than the national average. 17. That's not normal. That's excellence. And your name kept coming up. Customers asked for you. Not the shop, not the brand. You. Maggie felt her throat tighten. Tucker had never once shared those numbers with her. Not once. Whitfield handed her the envelope. First, we want to make sure you have what you need right now. So this is a gift. No strings attached. Just a cushion while we talk about what's next. She opened it cautiously and gasped. A cashier's check. More zeros than she'd ever seen in one place since David's life insurance. I can't accept this, she whispered, instinctively trying to hand it back. But Eleanor gently pushed her hands close around it. You already have, dear. It's yours. We're not taking it back. Consider it back pay for the years you worked harder than anyone and got paid less. Maggie stared at the check, then back at the group, overwhelmed. And the second part? She asked. Whitfield motioned to a younger man holding a blue folder. He stepped forward and opened it, revealing sketches, projections, and a typed proposal. We want to help you open a bike shop, Whitfield said, right here in Fairfield County. Your own shop. You'd be the owner, head mechanic, the boss. You'd set the tone. A shop, Maggie echoed. It felt surreal just saying the words. Not just a shop, the young man chimed in. A community hub, a place where local kids can learn repair skills, where you offer fair prices, and where families in need aren't turned away because they can't pay up front. Another woman added, we'll fund the startup. You bring the heart, the vision, the talent. Maggie stared at them, stunned. Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me. Whitfield smiled gently. We know enough. That video told us everything. A town that would let someone like you go? That's a town that needs you more than it realizes. Maggie looked around at the group, blinking back tears. These were successful people, powerful people, and yet they stood in front of her apartment building in yesterday's clothes, with a check in one hand and blueprints in the other. For the first time in years, she felt like the weight of survival was lifting, like she could exhale fully, like she could dream again. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Just say you'll think about it," Whitfield said. "Talk to your daughter. Sleep on it. We'll meet again tomorrow, same time." As the group dispersed, Maggie turned and saw Jessica standing at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, clutching her favorite stuffed animal and staring wide-eyed. "Mom!" she called softly. "What's going on?" Maggie smiled and motioned her over. Jessica hurried down, and Maggie wrapped an arm around her. "Remember what Daddy used to say?" she asked. "About how kindness matters more than money?" Jessica nodded, still confused. "Well," Maggie said, "sometimes kindness finds its way back." Later that afternoon, while Jessica was at the kitchen table sketching bike shop designs with crayons, and Maggie was sorting through the proposal folder, a knock came at the door. She opened it to find Tyler and his mother on the doorstep. Tyler was holding a carefully folded thank you card and a small homemade apple pie. "We saw you on the news," his mom said. "We just want to thank you properly for everything." Tyler beamed. "The video's over 1 million views now. People are calling Pinewood asking for you." "Mr. Tucker's, well, he's not thrilled," his mom added with a knowing smile. Maggie actually laughed. "I can imagine. What are you going to do now?" she asked gently. "We heard some rich folks showed up this morning." Maggie looked back at the kitchen where Jessica was enthusiastically drawing a wall of heroes to honor military families in the new shop. "I think I'm going to build something," Maggie said, her voice full of something it hadn't held in a long time. Hope. Something David would have been proud of. A year later, on a breezy Saturday morning in late June, Main Street was packed. Families strolled the sidewalks. Kids clutched snow cones and balloon animals, and a banner stretched across the front of a sleek new storefront read, "Hometown Wheels. Grand opening today." At the center of it all stood Maggie Holbrook, wearing a denim work shirt with her name embroidered on the chest and a wide, humble smile on her face. Behind her, the brand new bicycle shop gleamed. A polished sign above the door bore the shop's logo. A stylized bike was surrounded by small hands. Inside, the shop was everything Maggie had once scribbled in notebooks late at night, too scared to dream out loud. Now it was real. There was a full-service repair bay lined with state-of-the-art tools, a cozy waiting area with bean bags, and a bookshelf of DIY manuals for young mechanics. A chalkboard wall covered in doodles and signatures from local kids. And tucked toward the back, a glass-enclosed classroom where teens from the local high school could learn repair skills hands-on. But what stole everyone's attention was the wall near the entrance. At eye level on a custom pedestal was a gleaming, beautifully restored Schwinn Stingray, Tyler's old bike. The engraved handlebars had been lovingly retouched. The Army decals shine like new, and the little unit patch under the seat was still sealed behind clear plastic. Above the bike, a plaque read, "For those who believe kindness matters more than money." Tyler's family had donated the bike shortly after his father returned home safely from deployment. It had become a symbol, not just of one act of compassion, but of everything the shop stood for. That day, as Maggie watched the crowd file in and out of the store, her heart swelled with something she hadn't felt fully in years: peace. Jessica was helping hand out lemonade and proudly explaining the youth apprenticeship program to anyone who would listen. She wore a t-shirt that read "Future Head Mechanic" and told every grown-up who asked that one day she was going to take over the shop from her mom. People had come from every corner of Fairfield County and beyond. There were local veterans, parents with their children, the mayor, teachers, old customers from Pinewood Bicycles who had heard about what happened and wanted to support her instead. And of course, standing near the ribbon with a pair of oversized novelty scissors was Jackson Whitfield. He looked proud, but more than that, he looked content. When Maggie gave her brief speech, she didn't read from a paper. She just spoke from the heart. "I never planned to own a business," she said, eyes sweeping across the crowd. "But when you lose someone you love and life gets turned upside down, you learn to find new meaning in the places you never expected." She paused, her voice steady. "This shop isn't just about bikes. It's about second chances. It's about community. It's about doing the right thing, even when it's hard." The crowd applauded, and Maggie smiled through it all, trying not to get choked up. After the ceremony, as the crowd moved into the shop, Whitfield came up beside her. "You did it," he said softly. "We did it," Maggie replied. He chuckled. "You know, I've backed a lot of businesses in my time, but I've never seen one bring a town together like this." Maggie glanced at the packed sidewalk, at the faces glowing with curiosity and joy. "It's not really about the bikes," she said. "It's about giving people something to believe in." Whitfield nodded. "Well, you've done that in spades." As the sun moved higher, Maggie stepped inside to check on things. One of the teenage apprentices, Carlos, a quiet but sharp 16-year-old, was explaining brake calibration to a younger kid who couldn't have been more than 8. Maggie watched him for a moment unseen and felt tears well up again. This is what David would have wanted, she thought. Not just survival, but legacy. Later that week, a journalist from a regional magazine came to do a feature on the shop. The story had grown far beyond the viral video that sparked it all. Now it was about a woman who took heartbreak, hardship, and injustice and turned them into something living, something permanent. The article ran with a title that Maggie hadn't expected, but which stuck with her long after. The Mechanic with the $1 Million Heart. People started writing letters. Some sent checks. Others sent pictures of their kids riding bikes they'd refurbished using tips from Hometown Wheels' website. Veterans wrote in to say thank you. A former co-worker from Pinewood sent a simple note. "You were always better than that place. We all knew it." Even Tucker, surprisingly, sent a terse card months later. "Hope you're well. Business is slower without you. No hard feelings." Maggie didn't write back, but she smiled and slid the card into a drawer, next to a thank you note from Tyler and his mom. By then, the shop was thriving, not just as a business, but as a movement. High schoolers signed up to intern in the repair center. Local families donated old bikes for kids in need. And on the first Saturday of every month, Hometown Wheels hosted a community fix day, where anyone could come in for free maintenance, no questions asked. On one of those Saturdays, a man in army fatigue stepped through the door. He looked around slowly, eyes settling on the restored Stingray. "Can I help you?" Maggie asked, stepping out from behind the counter. The man nodded. "I'm Tyler Mitchell's dad." Maggie blinked. "Of course. He told me so much about you." He walked up to the bike, touched the handlebar with reverence, and smiled. "He kept this in his room every night while I was gone," he said. "Wouldn't let his mom move it an inch. When I saw it again, all fixed up, I couldn't believe it. That bike meant the world to him. And to me." Maggie said nothing, just nodded, heart in her throat. "I wanted to say thank you," he said. "You didn't have to help, but you did, and it meant everything." She swallowed hard. "It was my honor." As he turned to go, he added, "We talk about you a lot at home, not just what you did, but who you are." That evening, after locking up, Maggie stood alone in the shop. The lights were low. The air smelled faintly of rubber and lemon oil. She walked to the wall of honor, where Tyler's bike gleamed under a small spotlight, and placed her hand on the engraved handlebars. "You were right, David," she whispered. "Kindness really does come back around." She stood there for a long moment, just breathing, just grateful. Outside, the town buzzed on. But inside Hometown Wheels, the world was quiet, peaceful, and full of promise. Over the next few months, Hometown Wheels became more than just a shop. It became a cornerstone. Parents brought their kids there not only for flat tires and squeaky brakes, but to teach them about community. Teachers invited Maggie to speak at career days. Local news outlets followed up with stories on how her little shop had sparked a shift in Fairfield County. One story inspired another. A bakery down the street started a buy one, give one breakfast program for school kids. A local carpenter offered free repairs for senior citizens. Acts of kindness began to ripple outward, just like the name of the foundation that helped start it all. Pay it forward. Maggie found herself busier than she'd ever been, running inventory, mentoring teens, balancing finances, managing community events. But she never complained. She'd built something real. And more than that, she'd built something good. And Jessica, she blossomed. She took to the shop like she was born for it. After school, she'd help wipe down tools, organize parts, or sit cross-legged in the corner drawing new designs for bikes that had personality. Not just paint jobs, she added character. A lightning leopard BMX with paw prints and racing stripes. A lavender cruiser named Grace with flower petals and spokes. One day, Maggie asked, "What would you name your own shop someday?" Jessica answered without hesitation, "Heart Wheels." It made Maggie smile every time she thought of it. Then one crisp autumn morning, nearly a year and a half after opening, Maggie received a letter in the mail. A formal cream-colored envelope with elegant handwriting and a gold embossed seal. At first, she thought it was a wedding invitation, but when she opened it, she gasped. Inside was a letter from the state governor's office. Maggie Holbrook had been nominated and selected to receive the State Medal of Community Impact, an award given to citizens who had demonstrated exceptional service, compassion, and leadership. She was speechless. The ceremony was scheduled for December, and while Maggie wasn't big on fanfare, she agreed to attend, not for herself, but because she knew it mattered for people to see that doing the right thing wasn't just good. It was worthwhile. The day of the event, she wore a simple navy dress. Jessica wore a sparkly blue one and clutched her mother's hand the entire drive to the Capitol. Whitfield picked them up personally, beaming with pride. The event was elegant, held in a historic rotunda building with marble floors and tall windows that poured in winter light. One by one, honorees were called to stage. An EMT who saved children from a fire, a foster parent who'd taken a dozen teens over the years, and then Maggie Holbrook, founder of Hometown Wheels, for her extraordinary service to her community and her dedication to kindness in action. As she walked the stage, the applause thundered. Maggie didn't see herself as a hero. She hadn't done any of it for recognition. But in that moment, as she accepted the medal and looked out at the crowd, she realized something powerful. Sometimes, kindness feels invisible, quiet, unnoticed, but it never really disappears. It lands in someone's heart and grows roots. And eventually it comes back. The governor shook her hand. "We need more people like you, Ms. Holbrook," he said warmly. After the ceremony, reporters asked her questions. Cameras flashed. Jessica stuck close to her side like a proud little shadow. When someone asked, "What's next for Hometown Wheels?" Maggie smiled and answered without hesitation, "Expansion." The truth was, Maggie had already started scouting locations for a second shop in a neighboring town where affordable repairs were hard to find. Not a chain, not a franchise, just a second home for kindness on two wheels. As winter deepened and the holidays approached, Maggie's shop added a new tradition, the holiday bike drive. With help from the Pay It Forward Foundation, they collected used bikes, fixed them up, and distributed them to children from families in need before Christmas. Each bike came with a handwritten tag that read, "This bike was made possible by kindness. Ride forward." The first Christmas, they gave away 63 bikes. The second Christmas, 214. And every year, a few of those kids would come back in the spring to volunteer, wanting to give back to the place that gave them their first real taste of hope. On New Year's Eve, as fireworks cracked in the distance and snow began to fall lightly, Maggie and Jessica stood outside the shop, bundled up and sipping hot cocoa. The storefront windows were frosted, but through them you could see the sparkle of fairy lights strung above the workbenches. Inside, a few apprentice teens were laughing and finishing up a late-night tune-up on a donated tricycle. Jessica looked up at her mom. "Do you think Dad would have liked this place?" Maggie looked down at her daughter, heart swelling with love. "He would have loved it," she said. "He always said kindness was the best kind of legacy." Jessica smiled and leaned her head on Maggie's side. "You made something big, Mom." "No," Maggie said softly, wrapping her arm around her. "We did." As the clock struck midnight, Maggie took a deep breath and watched her breath miss in the air. It had all started with one decision. One boy, one broken bike, and a mechanic who refused to say, "Not my problem." Instead, she'd said, "Bring her round back." And in doing so, she hadn't just fixed a bike. She'd changed her life. She'd changed her town. And now, Every time a child rides away from hometown wheels with wind in their hair and a smile on their face, that simple act of kindness rides forward with them, down every sidewalk, across every park, into every corner where someone else might be waiting for their own second chance. So next time you see someone struggling, next time you're faced with a choice that costs you something but might mean everything to someone else, remember Maggie Holbrook. And remember that sometimes the smallest fix can lead to the biggest change. Thanks for watching Tales Unveiled. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe, and check out the next video on your screen. It's one you won't want to miss. Until next time, stay kind.